This is Steve Lowery. I'm the arts and culture editor with Long Beach Post. I've had my job at the Post for about 6 months, and I'm pretty sure in that time the best thing I've seen so far has been Long Beach Opera and Cal Rep's production of In the Penal Colony. And I'm very lucky to be joined by two people who have something to do with that production. Director Jeff Janisheski, we're having a joke about that. There's Jeff. And actor Matthew Limas. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've heard what I had to say about this. What kind of reaction are you hearing from other people who've seen the production?
Oh,
What are you hearing?
okay. So I'm hearing like visually stunning, and like when you're in the box, all you see is your own reflection because it's plexiglass.
That's the box.
Yeah. This is the box. All you see is your own reflection. But like I remember being out here for a few times, seeing the actors doing like vocal runs, and I just see it, and it's like, oh my goodness, I could just imagine how it all looks in the audience. But yeah, visually stunning keeps coming up from friends. Yeah.
How about you, Jeff?
For me, the most important praise has been coming from the people who were formerly incarcerated, who I interviewed for the piece and whose words are part of the piece. And for them, it's a very cathartic experience, it's a very moving experience, and so that makes the whole project completely worthwhile for me. I mean, if I've done and moved anyone, I've moved them, and that makes it deeply meaningful for me.
I have to tell you, I saw the Friday production, and I'm going to be very honest, I did not want to come. It had been a long week. Friday had been a long day, and anybody who knows Long Beach Opera knows they are not concerned with you coming out of the theater snapping your fingers, right?
No.
It is a challenging company. It's world-renowned,
Yeah.
but they certainly ask a lot of their audience, and I was like, I don't know if I have anything to give that day. But it was cathartic, as you say, because of the reasons you pointed out. I collared Jeff after the production, and I told him that this particular opera is by Philip Glass from a short story by Franz Kafka, Two Titans. Jeff had been so bold as to say, not good enough. And tell him what you ended up doing.
So what we've done is, this show is the opera by Philip Glass based on the Kafka short story, as Steve said. But what I've done is I've added to that text, verbatim text, from students on campus, graduate students, undergraduate students, all of whom were formerly incarcerated. So I did those interviews, I worked with the local playwright, we wove together a beautiful text that the amazing actors speak, and they are speaking the text of those people who were imprisoned, and giving a voice to those people who have been silenced and are still silenced. And I think what makes the piece resonant, what makes it relevant, what makes it powerful is the fact that these current words from students on campus are being spoken by these actors, one of whom actually is formerly incarcerated. One of the actors in the group is formerly incarcerated and was interviewed. And that's what gives the piece its power. And so that working in tandem with the text, with Philip Glass, with the Kafka, I think it makes it a really full package and an intense production.
The opera's been around for about 20 years.
Correct.
You're the first one to come up with this idea. What was the spark for you?
Well, the original opera actually had something similar but a bit different. So the opera was directed by Glass's then wife, Joanna Akalaitis, and she wove in text from Kafka. So I thought, okay, this is not, this has been done. I have some permission from Glass and from the very first production. But what sparked it for me was when I arrived here 3 years ago, I read an article about Long Beach Opera, and I said to myself, I want to partner with them. And at the same time, I read an article about Rising Scholars, this group of students that were formerly incarcerated. And I also thought, well, that would be phenomenal to partner with them, interview them, and do some kind of devised theater piece around them. And about a year and a half ago, Andres Midasek and I, the conductor and artistic director of Long Beach Opera, met. We decided on doing In the Penal Colony, and that's when I thought, well, those projects can merge. We can do the opera, and we can also create a devised theater piece working with Rising Scholars and meld the two. And so that was really the vision.
I don't know if it's a criticism of Long Beach Opera, but they certainly have a reputation for very much being in the head, and maybe sometimes at the expense of the heart. And I think you might remember this. When the show was over, they had a kind of a Q&A with people, and a woman here said, I think she said she had been to every Long Beach Opera production ever, and this was the first time that she had cried. Now, I have a theory about this, which I told Jeff, which is If you had come and seen this production, and it was Philip Glass's music with Kafka's story, these are two people, again, who are not really interested in amusing you or entertaining you, and they can at times be existentially distant from you. It would have been very easy to watch this production and say, oh, that's a horrific, monstrous world that Kafka's always presenting. Let's go get some cake. Because of the text, all of a sudden you are confronted with the fact that this is not something that's happening on some mysterious island. It is our prison system. Real people go through this all the time. Matthew, you are actually intimately involved with this. Can you explain?
Yeah, so like the actors have to play a role in this. I think one of the most interesting parts of this production is that when the original, I guess, production, the prisoner is this one character, doesn't speak their language of the officer and the visitor, and essentially acts as this mute character who's an idiot and acts like a fool. And I think one of the most powerful things about this production is that you have these people, the visitor and the officer, who are able to get all existential and talk about these things, but you have people in the prison system who are faced with real world consequences, and they can't be existentialists because they have to worry about whether or not they're going to die or get stabbed or things like that. And I think this production is powerful because it gives a voice to a previously mute character. It gives a voice of, even though there's only 8 prisoners in this production, we kind of serve as vessels for these stories that are only a microcosm of all the horrific stuff that's happening in the prison industrial complex in the U.S. today.
And you, of course, have personal experience with this also, right? In your own life?
Yeah, in my own life, I, grew up all over SoCal, East Los Angeles, Fontana. Grew up on gangs, cousins who were gang members, family members who were formerly incarcerated, and you do your best to be this person. For me, personally, I did my best to be this scholar, this academic, always keeping on my toes so I don't get into that world. And so as a byproduct, you kind of build this idea that anything assimilated or associated with that is bad. Even family members I would hate simply because I associated with them with that lifestyle.
Right.
And I think this production, this whole process opened me up to realize that not everything is as black as white as we're told. That the prisoners in the system are criminals, but they're still humans. And a lot of the stuff that people are imprisoned for is like non-violent stuff. You have drug-related offenses, other stuff like that, and like we're told to demonize these people because the system profits off of that and profits off of the stigma.
And you mentioned to me, I think, that it's actually caused some healing in your family.
It has, I had a family member I'm not going to disclose who, but who I used to just not talk to much because they weren't much in my life up until recently, and I had this horrible idea of them that because they went through this and went through prison, that they're obviously a horrible person. But like now I'm hearing all this and what people go through and how in these low-income areas you're kind of pushed into this lifestyle. I mean, there has to be some kind of I was saying so like black and white and so binary, and I'm kind of mad at myself how I thought about that because I alienated a loved family member because of that, because I was told to think like that. And this process really just like reminded me that I can't shut people out because of their history.
Well, and of course, the public in general is told to think that way, and I think one of the most powerful choices you made as far as what the prisoners say, normally when people are talking about the prison system, they're talking about dollars and cents and policy and all that, and the most powerful things are people just saying, I'm going to die here. What is it? I envy the bird, or that bird is so lucky. They're so elemental and human that they just pierce your heart. When you were choosing, is that what you were looking for?
Well, when I was doing the interviews with all these people from Rising Scholars, their words pierced my heart. Their words were so moving. and awakened me to their pain and their history and their problems and their mistakes, and they're human, just like us. And their flaw is that they're not rich and that they can't buy their way out of the system. Let's be frank about it.
Yep.
It is a system that severely punishes the poor and benefits the rich. That people who are rich can get out on bail or get by a good lawyer or somehow, or at least, and have had a whole lifetime, a whole legacy of benefits and privileges that already set them up in certain ways. So it is a whole matrix of things that punish people. And I think when I was talking to all the people from Rising Scholars, their words and their humanity really moved me, and so that's what we wanted to put on stage. And people like Matthew are performing gorgeously.
Yeah.
You know, when I watch Matthew on stage, I see an actor who is a prism for a person's story. These stories, their words are very fragmented. It's a line here, a line there, a phrase there, a phrase there. But Matthew and the other actors are these beautiful prisms that allow those stories to unfold and to be seen in a wider dimension.
I have to be honest, when I talked to you before the production, and I've heard you were 18. I think this was your first production here at Long Beach?
First production with, Cal Rep and Long Beach Opera.
I expected you guys to look like student actors. I really did. I thought, like, oh, okay, they'll be okay, whatever, and they'll keep them in the background. You guys were fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, as a director, with this kind of intense material, and with people, not only Matthew, but other people here who have personal connection to this kind of material, how did you balance driving them to get the best performance with, like, trying not to, over-traumatize them?
Hopefully,
over-traumatize.
hopefully I haven't traumatized my actors. The way we do it, so anytime you're working on a very intense, heavy play, you have to make sure that the rehearsal room is filled with lightness. So early on in our rehearsal room, you'll remember from the first 3 weeks, we danced to silly songs. We did lots of fun things.
It does sit in your body, all the terrible things. It's horrible. I remember we were like looking at like the documents, the first original documents, and my castmate Kimberly just started crying. Like, it was horrific. And then when you're like actually moving through this and devising this theater piece, it like sits in your body. And like as an actor, you're trained to like breathe it in and let it go, because it's not you, it's this other thing, and you think it, but then it does sit with you because it's like real things. It's like these are real stories, real words.
Yeah.
And we did do silly dance parties and tell the dumbest jokes, just to so we can leave home without having nightmares.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to keep the room buoyant. You have to keep the room light. You have to keep the room safe and protected. But what was easy for me as a director was that the 9 actors that I was working with were deeply committed. They were 100% there. They went so deeply into the character and created such detailed portraits. I didn't have to push them. Yeah. I didn't have to do that work. I gave them the platform. I gave them prompts. Of course, I directed them in some capacity. But when you're working with actors like Matthew, they do a lot of that work themselves because they're driven.
Well, the result is stunning. It's terrific. If you're watching this, I would recommend you getting out here this weekend. Now, you guys have put on a few. It's sold out, but the response has been so huge that you guys actually put some new tickets out.
There are a few select seats, so do go to calrep.org to get the remaining tickets left. We do have tickets left. Please come see the show. It's very important.
Any chance that there will be additional shows?
No.
Really?
No, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Come see the show.
We're not getting picked up for Broadway, people.
Matthew, Jeff, thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you.